Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly live stream of the Platformers. And today we are going to talk about the journey of a DevOps team to platform engineering team. And for that, I got with me a special guest, someone that we are waiting for a long time for his session, Sergio Petean. Hey, Sergio, how are you?
Hey, guy. I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me and having me today here. Waiting for our conversation.
Thank you very much for joining. I will just give a brief introduction about Sergio because it does a lot of amazing things. So Sergio is a director of cloud engineering and operations in Allianz Direct. If you know the company, one of the biggest company. And also Sergio is contributing a lot in the CNCF tab or the, technological advisory board or technical advisory board, which is like a group of end users and people using CNCF projects and helping to redirect the way of end user. And Sergio is going to share a lot. So thank you very much for joining. Where are you joining us from?
And actually, today I'm joining you from Romania. I had to visit my parents, so I made a quick trip, unexpected trip, I have to say. But I'm happy to say that the internet is much better than in Munich, so we're gonna have a safer conversation. Yeah.
It's amazing how every time we got guests from Germany, they complain about the internet. So that's that's great. So I think that something that we talked about previously before the session is the fact that platform engineering really did a lot of impact in Allianz Direct and the way that you worked before to now. And I think that everyone in the audience will love to hear about the journey and how you transform. And I have to do like a short introduction that Sergio got a really amazing mind map with a lot of data in it and something that I've never seen in my life. So you have to watch for that. But for people watching us live, it doesn't matter if you are on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, whatever. We do want you to participate in the session, meaning you can ask questions, you can comment, you can say hi, whatever. What you should do for that, just comment on the video. You want, I know, Sergio mentioned something. If you want to ask him, go there, comment about your question, and he will ask it live. So this is all the benefits of being live with us.
Yeah, I
Great.
would like to add here, no, because we decided before that this session should be focused on delivering value for whoever is listening, and therefore I believe the journey that I'm going to be talking about can be split it in few chapters or few phases that some of the end users might be there or kind of native end users, and it makes sense to pause at every single phase and try to take the questions because otherwise at the end probably I don't know, you're either going to miss the chapter that you're part of or everything is going to be a little bit blurred now. So I will try to avoid that. And so feel free to we're going to stop anyhow, but feel free to have your question ready. And then we're going to take all the questions that we can take.
Absolutely. My recommendation, just comment when your thought coming into your mind. And when we will stop, we will make sure that we ask your question. Cool. So maybe you can walk us through a little bit about the platform engineering at Allianz Direct.
Of course. I'm sharing the screen.
I will add it. Cool. There you go.
Wonderful. All right. I'm not going to start with the end, or I'm going to finish with the start. Let's put it like that. I have a certain definition, a certain view over what the platform engineering is from my point of view, from my experience, but I'm going to keep that till the end. Hopefully the journey that we're going to go through right now is going to explain how I got to that understanding of platform engineering. So my journey in Allianz Direct, it's basically visualized in the mind map that you see right here. I would like to explain this one because it's quite interesting. It's somehow a framework on guiding, I would say, any digital transformation that's it's happening in cloud native, and mine is not different than this. And the first point that I would like to emphasize is the challenges that you're going to be having. Now, it's mainly whenever you start a new journey, you have a lot of things that you are concerned or a lot of unclarity on what's the next point or next evolution for you. And it's always good to keep an eye on where you are, capabilities you have, of course, understand your context, understand your budgets and the industry that you're acting, and that's very important. And the collaboration that will be enabled by the context that you are in is going to have, again, a huge impact on the assets that you're going to be delivered to the organization. You always have to be driven by value, and you have to make sure that you deliver that value. So the impact that you bring to your team, engineering team, organizational group, always needs to be measured. So that's how I structure also the story. And I started initially with a concept which I like to call innovation sovereignty. It has to do with digital sovereignty, of course, and data sovereignty. But the nuance that I'm referring is more like the internal capabilities that you as a team or you as an organization have or need to have in order to capture the value of your transformation. That's very important, and that's something that I focus in the first half of the journey. And once I achieved that, basically, and I was able to prove the value of that by putting the impact in, then basically I could move towards delivering really the unbeatable state towards our organization. But that's a prerequisite that I would totally recommend to any organization that is starting a similar journey. All right, so to jump into the topic, my journey started in 21. So January 2021, I took a new role, and I brought with me a lot of experience from a previous digital transformation that I ran in a bank, in a big and classical bank in Vienna. And what I realized is that the team that I inherit was having a certain identity, which actually was having multiple identities that were not really correct. Now,
Can you increase it a little bit if you're sharing the screen? Like, yeah,
of course,
that's much better.
All right. So basically, the team behind the DevOps or SRE or development experience was in a state of fake SRE topology. If you are aware of team topologies, then you're going to find this anti-pattern. And I would say a lot of companies are basically in that setup at the beginnings, and it's okay to be there, but it's not okay to stay there, right? So becoming aware and having this assessment and this reality check, it's always important. That's what I did in the first few months. I really talked to everybody, especially with the team members, and we realized that we need to fix it immediately. We need to make sure that the identity, both internal identity, but also external identities, are basically unified under one single identity, and we reflect that in the relations that we're going to have with our stakeholders. There is also a misunderstanding, I guess, around platform engineering, which I'm going to be talking a little bit later, which is that you need to target only one type of stakeholder, which is software engineers. That's not the case. That's not the way I experience it, at least not in a huge enterprise. You have to consider as many stakeholders as possible, ideally all the stakeholders that have anything to say into your production state. So that's where we are. We had also some other complexities. We had a lot of externals, and the balance between, or the ratio between internals and externals was not ideal. And we also have a certain policy that forces you to have a rotation of the externals. And that means that you have a lot of wisdom that you lose. You need to capture the value, you need to capture the identity, the culture of your team, and of course the wisdom. And you can only do that with the concept I call, and I mentioned earlier at the beginning, because there's no way I can emphasize that too much. It's the innovation sovereignty. Once I realized that, and we had a very serious conversation with the team, we decided to have our internal definition of what DevOps means. DevOps, it's a loaded term. It still is after so many years. When you say DevOps in a room, you're going to have so many different understanding of the same concept. So we needed to really pause for a second, and we took all the key principles that you find in the DevOps book from Google, and we added a few more. And we went beyond that, and we said, let's get to the details and let's see what actually it means for us. What does automation means? What does culture means? What does security means? And this was also the time when we talked about the principles, again, identity and principles, because they were like really related. So we wanted to work in a certain way. We wanted to work with certain people, and we wanted to have a certain impact. And what we also realized is that we wanted to own at least a part of the backlog that we have. Because when we put everything in order, it took us a few months now to collect all the tasks and stories and epics that we had to work. And the life of DevOps, it's not an easy one, especially when you have now a lot of incidents, a lot of technical debt, maybe technical questions. So more or less, you don't own much of your backlog. And what we said was like, okay, we want to actually build a platform, and we want that platform to be self-service. That was the mission that we defined. And in order to do that, we need to own at least half of the backlog. So that was extremely important for us to really work as a product team. There was no platform engineering back then, but we did realize that in order to have an impact, the impact that we want to have on the organization, and we saw that impact now with automation that we're bringing, we are saving that much. With the technical support we're bringing, we are saving that much. Being present in an incident, again, we are saving a lot of productivity, cost, and also operational cost now. So we saw the impact we have, and we said we can amplify that if we get the time to bring more automation, to bring more security, to bring more concepts from DevOps into the digital world.
It's amazing because like platform engineering was not a term back then, and you essentially crafted it on your own, right?
Yes, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
And what was like your questions around it? Like, should we do it self-serve? Or it was like clear that you're going to bring self-serve services because it costs like quite amount of resources to do that.
Well, we knew that if we're going to be successful as an organization, we're going to scale. And early on, we realized how scarce the good DevOps resources are. There was no way we're going to be scaling with the same speed that our organization is scaling. And therefore, our argument was that the only way we're going to survive, the only way we can build a product that is going to be future-proof, is to build it together with our stakeholders. Again, I'm going to be speaking more about who are those stakeholders and how those stakeholders evolve over time. But initially, we said we want to talk to security. We were very lucky to have a CISO that was listening and was really understanding security in the same way that we were seeing it. And then, of course, with the software engineers, the head of the engineering was a top guy. He recognized the value that we were bringing. So we started engaging, and they were the first two stakeholders for us. So this is where we started the conversation, and we're going to see in the impact that this is also where we had the first big impact with our work on the whole organization.
Amazing. I'm looking forward to hear how is the impact. We do have some questions from the audience, so Sergio will keep going, and after that we will stop for questions.
All right. Wonderful. That's good. That's good news. I'm very happy. That means
do you want me to bring them now?
Yes, let's go for it.
Okay,
that's
cool.
Most important. Yeah.
So we got Matar. Matar is asking like, what would you say made you think about reorging? Like the biggest issue that triggered it? Like what was the biggest issue that triggered the reorg?
The internal reorg.
I think he's asking about the SREs moving from the outside into like the reorg of the SREs.
Yes, I mean, very good question. We haven't got yet to the topology, right? I'm gonna go to the next phase. So we got here in the first iteration, really become an advocacy team towards our stakeholders. But what triggered was the lack of awareness and the multiple identities that we had. It was extremely confusing for anyone in our organization to know what we are doing, and sometimes even for us was quite challenging to understand what are we working. Why are we working, and what's the value that we are bringing into the overall organization, and how is that going to evolve together with the whole stack in the next 6 months? I don't want to say hate, but I hate unclarity. And I found that unclarity is something that I cannot live with. And I push for bringing that clarity inside everything that we were doing. That was internal identity, that was about external identities. That was about the backlog, the way of working. We were like pushed to do Scrum, but then we said that makes no sense because we own nothing from the backlog. So how can you do a sprint with that? So let's do Kanban and let's do it our own way because we know best how is that happening. But let's measure all the tasks and understand the load that we have, because once you understand the load, you understand also how many FTEs you have and how large the team needs to be to cope with the pressure that the organization is putting on you.
Amazing. Matar is saying thank you, and it's amazing that you were able to fill this gap and address it. Super cool. And we got another question. This is going to be the last question for now, from Adam King. Adam King asked, did you meet any resistance from any part of the business to reorganize?
Of course. I mean, obviously you have pressure from everywhere. And that's why it's very important to start speaking the business language now. And that's why you need to measure the impact of your work. Initially, of course, you make some promises. You say, okay, look, you first measure, say, this is the reality. We don't own a backlog. We are too little. We cannot handle the incidents. We cannot handle the backlog that we have. We cannot intervene in all the places you want to have. So first, you raise it as a lack of opportunity, a missing opportunity. But then once you recognize that, and maybe you ask from business more budget to grow the team, then the next thing that you have to do is show the impact. Say, okay, I ask for those many FTEs, or that's the cost behind it. But look, with that investment, I'm producing this much. Now, this is the real impact that I'm having. So your investment, it's actually working, and maybe you should invest a little bit more. Invest a little bit more, because then you're gonna get even more. But that comes again with a vision. You need to have a vision in what you want to create. And we said we defined that we want to have a platform. So that was a product, and we had a vision for that product. And part of the vision was promising that we're going to fix the CI/CD. There was a lot of productivity loss because a lot of time was spent during CI/CD, or CI/CD, some steps were taking too long, or you didn't have the quality in the right place, so you end up with a lot of incidents. So there were problems that we had to fix, and we ask a certain budget, and we promise to deliver that by, a few months from now. So I would say we always had this clarity in place. At least that's was with business. And then with the stakeholders, of course, there is a friction. You cannot grow more than other teams. But again, if you measure the impact of the team and the value, it's obvious for everyone, then I guess you have strong arguments.
100% agreed. Like, there is not any change that can happen without any resistance, right? Like, if there is no resistance, meaning there is no room for change. So you have to have somewhere, and happy with that. We do have some other questions. I think we will keep going, and we will go back to them later.
Perfect. Okay. So the next journey for us, once we solve the mystery of DevOps and we define the vision for us and the principles that we want to work and the way of working, basically was that we became indeed an advocacy. The whole team spoke with one language and with one identity, and we were extremely loud about who we are now. So we advocate for the value. We were getting in meetings, and we showed to the whole organization that we have something to say and we can contribute. And we made sure, especially incidents are extremely valuable.
Sorry, can you just zoom in? People wrote me that they can't see it. Yeah, that's much better.
Of course. So incidents are extremely valuable in this kind of situation, because that's where automation shines. That's where logging shines. That's where documentation shines now. So we always use this kind of emergencies now to show the value of DevOps, at least the value of DevOps the way we envision it now. And that's how we build somehow a vision, and we sold it to the other stakeholders. And we were convincing enough to have, as I mentioned, the first two stakeholders, the security and software engineering, joining the forces with us to build a vision that we communicated to everybody. So next for us, now that we had a vision, was to actually build something. Now, I'm gonna try to zoom in. The landscape most likely from CNCF, so I'm gonna zoom on the reference architecture for the platform engineering.
There's no way to zoom enough on the landscape. There's always more to zoom.
I'm sure. So I apologize for that. We can work something out maybe at the end. And please also follow me on the CNCF. I'm leading the technical advisory board member working group on reference architectures. And this is going to be part of that outcome, basically. So there will be more noise from me around this topic, and I'm sure we're going to have a better resolution on different reference architecture, not just the one I'm talking about. All right, so we basically recognize that cloud native journey is very complicated. We have understood really the complexity behind the whole landscape. I mean, look at this one. No, this is screaming loud, like this is complex, right? So we realized that we need to have a companion for this journey, and that companion was cloud native foundation. We wanted to be able to talk to end users that had the similar challenges as we had. We wanted to be able to talk to project maintainers, and make sure that we had the right feedback, get the right documentation, maybe contribute to some feature requests, have some bugs fixed. No, so we wanted to be a loud voice in the ecosystem. So we became cloud native members, and therefore we had the courage, to build our stack around cloud native. I would say more than 80-90% of our stack was cloud native. Of course, you have some tools that you need to take them. They are group standards, or they simply are unbeatable. So we worked around those, but every single time we wanted to address a problem, and this is where we painted the problems. Now we have the infrastructure, containerization, orchestration, storage, caching. So whenever we wanted to address a problem, the first starting point for us was like CNCF. Okay, what does CNCF has for us? What is publicly available now? So there was a starting point. And from there, if it was insufficient, immature enough, or the complexity was too high at that point in time, then basically we looked for alternatives. So this is the way we organize ourselves and the domains that we had to cover. And this is how we build the stack and the vision of the product for the next 6 months. We wanted to look at the present state, and then we looked like the ideal state in 6 months. And then we started working. And that's why you see here on the left, you see 3 different states. You have open, you have in progress, and you have done. Done means that we are happy for this iteration of the stack. Iteration normally takes 6 months to 12 months. And we started working. This was basically building our backlog. The 50% of our backlog was coming basically from the product that we define over here.
For people watching, this is the time to take a screenshot and map what you should do next.
By the way, this is 21. So take a snapshot, but keep the buttons ready for the next iteration. All right. Moving forward, once we had the stack ready, we started engaging on two streams with 2 different type of stakeholders. So software engineers and with security. And we decided, while going live in a certain country, live means that you build a business from zero. Now, not live that you go with a product in production or software in production. Like we were going live for the first time in a country. We had tens of microservices that were changed and deployed in different environments. And while the company was doing that, we decided that why not? Now is the time actually to change the whole CI/CD. It was a little bit extreme, though, but I mean, we knew what we can deliver. So we did just that. And I believe in few months, we have something like 3 months, we redesigned completely the whole CI/CD. And we redesigned it on let me go here. Sorry for going so fast. I'm going to zoom in on the CI/CD stack.
No worries. At least you zoom in enough. That's so people can see it.
Yeah. So on the CI/CD, we really redesigned it completely, and we said we had a Jenkins running on an infrastructure that we were not owning, and we had more than 200 Groovy jobs that no one was touching because they had so many owners in the past. And it was very slow, it was very complicated, was a nightmare. So we said, okay, enough, it's enough. We're going to spend now 3 months. It's going to be all hands on deck. This is the first delivery of the whole team. This is a moment to shine. So all of us did nothing. So we kept everything as minimum as possible outside of this work, and we really focused as a team. It was also very important for us as a team to actually build now the relations and build a certain decision process framework and different roles. So it was very important for all of us to be part of this journey. So we did that, and in 3 months we migrated all the batches, not all of them, because basically half of them were not needed. The problem was that whenever someone had to build a new task in Groovy, they were like duplicating one Groovy, and then you ended up you were duplicating. So we had a discovery with our software engineers. We discovered the owners of the task. So we did the whole migration of whatever made sense. And then we released the new CI/CD on Argo CD. We chose Tekton. We have Atlantis for infrastructure, now Artifactory, SonarQube for quality gates. And of course, then we use Prisma Cloud, but more on that on the DevSecOps stream. And back then we also have X-Ray. And we did that, and we were surprised by how well actually it got. So we started, as I said, we wanted to measure the impact. Again, there was an investment from the organization. Yes, developers were happy. You can imagine there was some friction while you migrate something so big. So they were not yet completely happy and not 100% convinced of the things that we did.
Yeah.
So we said, how do we manage to measure the impact that we have and the quality that we brought, not just in the context of our enterprise or organization or financial sector, but globally. So we chose DORA metrics. We found it extremely useful. So we started with that. And we need to build our DORA metrics module, microservice, to capture all the signals from all the parties, from all the tools that we're using. But now we are owning the whole stack. So was basically part of our job to extend our tooling to capture and give us the metrics that we wanted. That was possible because we were owning the whole stack. And we did that. And when we look at the metrics, this was in 22, we realized that we are in the first.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Of course. So we were in the first 11%. So there was no elite then. They dropped the elite in 22, but then they added that in 23 again. So we are in the first 11% best performance on how fast and how much quality we have in the software release process. And then we look at these values here. So we computed this. This is actually a business slide, right? We wanted to show the value that we're bringing. And soon after, they became OKRs for the whole tech department. So we look at the deployment frequency and lead time for change. So this is measuring the speed. The speed was great. But of course, you can move fast and fail fast. But then we look with the next 2 and actually the next 3, we look at the quality. So we were not failing. And whenever we were failing, we recover very fast. So we didn't lose much productivity nor business value. And we are very reliable. And on top of that, we found this is not sufficient. We created a new measure to extend DORA metrics, which was financial performance. We wanted to see what does it mean now to basically make a change. And now we looked, if DORA is looking on the production system, we were looking on all the systems, all the environments, and all the changes, whether they are configuration changes or infrastructure changes or business changes. And we ended up with a ratio of 48 euro per change.
Wow. Like, I have to say, like, it's amazing and incredible to see that you implemented DORA metrics almost from, I don't want to call it day one, but pretty in the initial stages, because people today, they're always asking, like, should we implement DORA metrics? Will it actually show the value of it? Because it takes some resources to implement that, to have the metrics and then compare it. By the way, for people who don't know about DORA metrics, there are the metrics and there are like research and reports that tells you what should be the definition for each one of them. And that will help you to understand if you are where you are in the industry. So it was Sergio referred before. And people always ask themselves, like, should I invest in DORA metrics or should I not? And it's amazing to see the impact it helps you. And is it something that went all along the way? Like all along the way, you always back to those metrics and compare and say, this is where we improved, or that was changing along the way?
It changed a lot. Initially, it was like we wanted to measure, we were blind. So we wanted to see how do we compare? How well do we do? We had no idea. And soon after, I mean, you do that once and game over, right? It's like, as you said, you made an investment, and if you only use it for that, then it's probably not worth it. You look back and say, okay, now that I know the answer, I know maybe it's not worth it to keep it alive. But what we realize is that the DORA metrics is not meant for that. DORA metrics, it's meant for continuous improvement. The way we have now DORA metrics is like we look at all the teams and we compare and we see different patterns on one single screen, patterns of software release. And then the teams can zoom in on their work and they look at all the versions and they look if there was like a feature request, a bug fix, or anything else. And it's allowing them basically to take ownership over the speed of delivery and the quality. So this is a fast feedback for the engineering teams to improve themselves. And they can always look to the other teams and they can learn from the best. And this way you make sure that this innovation speed actually is moving from one team to another team because they have the same language, they have the same metrics. And then they can easily zoom in on one other team, which is doing much better than another one. And they can take the best practices from there. So we evolved DORA metrics into a continuous improvement software delivery framework for the whole organization.
Wow, this is inspiring, to be honest. Inspiring, no, not less than that. Because I truly believe that if you are able to get these metrics and convince all the organization, then people can learn from other teams. This is like the goal and be optimized on platform engineering. So sorry for interrupting, but I had to ask.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a good story to say. So thank you for the question. All right. So by then, we had already impact on a team level, and we started having an impact on the engineering side. And I have to say that success amplifies impact. So next, basically, we target. Now we are more courageous. We have more capabilities. We build already on existing experience, and we knew that we can go to new stakeholders, and therefore we target a certain impact on the whole organization. And you're going to see soon that being successful on the organization level makes us successful on the group level. Again, success amplifies the impact. So we had a second stream with security team. I will not spend that much time here. Maybe it's more like a niche. We're happy to talk about this on another session. But early on, we introduced the concept of DevSecOps into the pipelines, and we started looking into vulnerabilities, and we got a lot of noise. Now there's this movement of shifting left to the whole organization, but you cannot shift left with noise, which means that you have to build security intelligence in-house. And we built, together with our CISO and a very smart company that helped us, we built so much intelligence around security, which allows us basically to reduce the vulnerabilities from, let's say, 50K, right? Which are no way you're going to shift left on that, to few, I guess 100, 120. And then when you split that to several teams, you end up with not more than 5 or 6 vulnerabilities per team, right? So once you get in that setup, then basically you can shift left. And while we did the shifting left, now we realized that we had to build a certain SRE framework for feedback to the developers. We realized that we are on a journey to build a certain flavor of SRE. We proved that with security, so we said it's time now to go with operational qualities and build more on the same feedback framework that we have here. So this was the trigger for the next evolution for us, which was SRE. And soon we realized that the idea is great, but the tooling and the technology that we have, even though it was great, and the processes that we had were not compatible with what we were trying to achieve. To give you an example, we were using...
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Yes.
So people do.
So I can zoom in on the processes. So we had a certain incident management in place, a certain alerting in place that was not so configurable, no. And then we have a certain observability stack that, was extremely hard to adapt to what we needed. So, for example, we adopted operators. We had to go and say the only way we can manage this It's if we had slots as a tool for SLOs, and then of course we go for these patterns. Now when we bring this change into our technology stack, and not least, you need to start educating yourself. You need to start writing documentation, good documentation, great documentation ideally, and then you start educating everyone around you together with you. And once we did that, so we had operators, we defined the processes, and we built a governance model. Is more like a library of all the services and the owners of those services, and with different roles. So we managed to map the whole software engineering side of our organization, and then we have clarity. Now we say that if that alert is firing, we know exactly that that team that owns that service, and maybe even that person that deployed last, is the one that has to see first the alert before we propagate it to a bigger audience. So with this, we basically reduce the noise to the minimum. And we also probably deleted more than 50% of the existing alerts because they were simply noise. If you don't have a run book behind an alert and you don't know how to react and it doesn't have an owner, you delete it. There's no point keeping it. So we did all that.
Weren't you afraid you're going to delete some critical alerts?
Yes, we were. I don't think we deleted anything too critical, because we always look at our historical data, and if nothing failed in the past 1-2 years, then most likely that's not so critical. And anyhow, if no one is doing anything, it shouldn't be there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we didn't do it like immediately. We reduced 10% and then another 10%. So there was like a journey of 8 months where we basically silenced a lot of alerts on our end, because there was one single team reacting to alerts, and then we distributed to the rest of the teams, basically. And while we do that, we also transform. So again, topology had to change. We built what I call a DDO, so distributed DevOps, focusing on SRE. This was a group of people focusing on this transformation on SRE. And they started educating, and we built a certain community in all the squads. So we're organizing tribes, and then we have squads. And then in every single squad, we identify at least one single person that is interested in the topic. We negotiated with the business to have 20% of the time focusing on operational concerns like security, like alerts, incidents, runbooks, and so on. And then we ended up with a certain community that we grew the knowledge around. And of course, the stack and the access rights and again, remember, we have the vision to have a self-service platform. So we basically made the big step towards empowering engineers, software engineers, to do more than just consuming the service. So now they could already create their own pipelines, extend the pipelines, create the secrets, create SLOs, create alerts, dashboards, and so on and so forth. All right.
This is like amazing to see the evolution of people moving from one way to the other. So it's not like the full transformation in what's really amazing in this process. It's not only the tech, it's not only the organizational structure, it's not only the focus, it's not only measuring things, it's all at once, and how it's well orchestrated. I think you did a really great job in my opinion. It's one of the most amazing story. We are still in the middle, but one of the most amazing story I ever heard.
Thank you very much. All right, and then I'm going to pause. Don't worry. So we did this, and now it's time again to measure our work. So what we did, we built SLOs, and then we started building dashboards for different stakeholders. And we started with business. Of course, we had a lot of APIs, so we needed to look into the APIs qualities. These are, for example, an example of SLOs for business, where we have total requests per APIs, we have latency on different percentiles, different endpoints. We build probes for all the URLs and things that we're consuming from outside. We have here, for example, all the internal and external services being monitored either with probes or different ways, and the status of that. And these are the SLOs back then. So in less than 6 months or so, we ended up with 210 SLOs. Some were global, meaning one example of SLO is like every single API should respond below, 6 seconds. No, should be the responding time. That's a global SLO. But then we had, of course, customized SLOs for different teams and different services. And every single SLOs, whenever you burn the error budget, of course, is triggering the certain reaction, a certain alert to different group of people. So this is how we measure it. And I'm going to take now a pause. If there are any questions, happy to take them, because this is a certain phase in a cloud native journey, and it makes sense to pause a little bit on it.
So there is one question. So there is one question from Tunmiz by Miji. I hope I said it right, pronounced it right. If not, pardon me. What is the role of internal developer platform builders like Nia Platform and Backstage? Is it better to build with them than build from scratch? So it's very tech-specific questions around Portal. My take, I'll try to answer, like Portal and the technology that you mentioned is a little bit different from the full story that we can see in here. Some of the things can be implemented toward portals, but I think the main focus in here is about the transformation from one organization, one process, and how it comes along the way. For example, the screens that we are now seeing, those are Grafana screens, so those can not be visible through those technologies.
Correct. I'm going to disappoint here, but we never, maybe now we are looking into that, but we never actually invested in IDP in the sense that we adopted a existing platform around that. What we did was like really focus on adopting GitOps. And basically we made sure that our engineers, they consume two resources. They have Git repo, and then they have Grafana. And of course, Kibana. We compute everything in Grafana nowadays. So as long as you have access to those tools, you should be good. And then we abstract a lot of things in the repos. We separated early on when we did the CI/CD the code, the business code from the configurations, and that means that you only really build once on dev, and then that's an immutable object. And then on every single environment you go, you have a certain, let's say, service-config, and that config has different folders for dev, test, pre-prod, and prod. And then you have different properties that you can now that's the internal development platform. That's where you define the resources that you need, the APIs that you want to expose, the policies that you want to have, now secrets that you want to have. So they just have to add something in these two repos, and then we make sure that the automation takes everything out of that, and then it feeds you back in this SRE loop with all the relevant information. So you're going to get in Slack a message saying your changes were deployed. This is a dashboard. This is how the state of your deployment.
Cool, thank you. I think that's it. We don't have any other question in the audience. If you do have, please post it on the comments.
All right, so then we go in the next phase. Once we started to have an impact on the organization. We had SLOs. We already had value, created a lot of value for business by making sure that all the APIs, and some of those APIs are probably in the contracts, are being well managed, well maintained, and you have full observability over them. Then we really said now is the time to do what I like to call org ops. So it's not DevOps, it's not DevSecOps, it's org ops, so organization operation, because if you're a digital company, basically every part of your organization could be or should be at stakeholders for the platform engineering. So we started defining the first stakeholders. This is back in 22, I believe, end of 22. So we said we need to think about users and everything we do.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Of course. And business is the closest to the users. And then why not? We are a very highly regulated company, so compliance is a huge stakeholder for us. And GitOps, it's the best thing you can have to make compliance happen. And then, of course, delivery, it's very important for us. And we have quality, and then we have security, and we have data teams, and we have, of course, sustainability as well. And why not incident management? You have incident managers, and you have production managers. And they have, of course, a lot to say in how these things are operated. once we identify the stakeholders, we said, okay, they are interested in the following. So we define basically the SLIs, the indicators that they might be interested. And then we define some values. So we actually created SLO, service level objectives. So this was the overview back then. It evolved since then. We have more stakeholders and, of course, more SLOs. But this was clear for us that they are the real stakeholders, and we need to satisfy all of them. So we had to evolve again. Meanwhile, I didn't mention, but the organization grew almost exponentially. So we went from, let's say, 200 employees to more than 1,500 employees. We went to more than 500 engineers. So the organization grew considerably while the team more or less stayed the same. And this was the value of investment, of initial investment. We had internal capabilities, we had automation, great documentation, and we even have great onboarding factor. If someone is joining the team, you know exactly through what you have to go in order to learn. But that again, we also were facing an internal problem, internal problem, which was cognitive load. It was extremely complicated and hard for a DevOps to take the full knowledge of the whole platform. Because again, platform engineering is something holistically. You have to treat it holistically. And that means that every single change that you do in one part of your platform will have an impact on other parts of the platform. You have to be aware of that. And we found that the easiest way to do this is to apply, probably again from topologies, the reverse Conway maneuver, which was to take the stack that you have and then organize the team around the stack that you have. So basically, every single tech guild or DDO that you see here in this picture is basically representing one domain from the stack. You have observability, you have security, you have AWS, you have Kubernetes. No? And then you have a certain amount of people temporarily working in that domain till they get to the right knowledge. And once they get there, they need to rotate. They go to the next one, and they go to the next one, and the next one. And of course, the technical leads, they have the holistic view, and they are the ones that are driving basically the evolution of the technical evolution of the platform.
This is, I think, what is really unique about that is the convoy reverse maneuver, to build the organization around the software structure. For people who don't know, there is convoy law, and actually created the organizational structure according to your software is the opposite of that. So it's kind of interesting way to take a look at that. It's the first time I hear this term.
Maybe the lesson here is that you don't need to change the whole organization. It's you can do that kind of course, if you have a certain freedom, then you could have these kind of transformations inside your team. Now you define some borders and say, this is a platform team, and then they have to work in a certain way. The communication needs to go in a certain way. And of course, the knowledge has to be spread in a certain way if you want to treat it holistically, and also hiring a new person is so much easier. You get someone onboarded, and then you say day one you can contribute to observability or CI/CD, and then in the next 3 months you're going to be active in one DDO, and next you jump to security, and while you're in security you keep connected to AWS, so you grow in AWS. So it's a very simple way of getting into something very complicated, something organic.
Yeah, I agree. So what's the next step?
Next step.
We have time for the last step.
All right, going fast. Again, we measured that. We had officially, this is a nice recognition from us, was that we had, when the organization is defining OKRs and then pushing down towards all the layers, we were called basically at the OKR table and said, what are the technical OKRs for the engineering side? And we said, let's do this. DORA metrics, availability, and of course SLOs coming from SLE. So this was nice recognition for us, and these SLOs are now part of every single engineer and every single employee actually of our organization. And next, because we were successful on the organization level, we started, this was a previous one, let me go to an updated version on that. I believe the next version is going to be Age of Platforms. Because once you have a platform engineering team in place that builds a cool platform, we have a certain, let's call it bedrock, even though this term is overloaded. We have a lot of assets that can be part or can be foundational parts of a new platform. Now you have, in a huge enterprise like Allianz or any other huge enterprise, you have different business needs and you have different requirements. You cannot, you can be ambitious with one platform, but if you try to make it too generic, you're going to lose a lot of qualities. No? So at one point, you're going to have to decide, okay, with the same team, I cannot do 10 different platforms, but at least I can do 2 different platforms. Maybe one is, it has to be like really multi-tenant and focus on EKS because you have some stateless jobs and you have databases and some legacy. But then that again, and this was our case, we had to build a global platform that needs to scale globally, and you cannot hire the talent that you have with expertise on EKS. And that's why we said, let's have an EKS plus ECS, right? Where ECS is the tenant. And then we basically, with the stack that we had, we built a completely different platform to sustain the global needs.
Wow.
Yes. And that obviously is changing you. Topology-wise, because right now you're going to have a team, a platform engineering team that needs to handle not 1, but 2 platforms. And then you're going to have on those platforms even different stakeholders. So altogether, you're going to have a bigger set of stakeholders that you need to handle. And you have to evolve again to keep up with that.
And absolutely, like Sergio, thank you for walking us through. Like, is this the current state or something that you aiming toward?
This is the current state. No, actually, we evolved already from this one. We are evolving very fast nowadays. So we changed from, let's say, Terraform to Crossplane, and now we have both of the 2 words. So we evolve constantly. We, again, every 6 months or so, now it seems it's happening faster because we had to redesign everything. When you try to have a stack supporting 2 platforms, every single tool that you have needs to be redesigned in a certain way. You have different, like identity, the metrics have to flow in a different way. Then you need to have certain management clusters, that takes care of your security, your policies, and so on and so forth. So we went through a huge redesign in the past 6 months or so. And now we are making the last fine tunings, but I'm sure we're going to change a lot of things soon as well. The pace of change is just it's getting higher and higher. It's just improving because the more capabilities you have, the more knowledge, the more experience, the more requests you have, the more tempting you're gonna be to touch everything. You're never too happy with what you have, and plus the technology is changing every single day. So you're gonna have a completely different set of options in front of your eyes today than tomorrow. So you always have to challenge yourself.
Amazing. So Sergio, first of all, thank you very much for sharing this process and evolution and this almost 4 years of what you did. I think it's one of the most amazing story around platform engineering. I'm absolutely going to refer people to this video because it's going to be on YouTube forever to understand your thoughts and your way around it. I know that you're very, one last thing, I know you're very involved in the CNCF, in the Technical Advisory Board, and you are looking for people willing to contribute there. So do you want to give 1 or 2 sentences around that so people will know how they can help you to promote? Because I think people already understand that you're a person that people would like to interact with.
Yeah, thank you very much, Guy, for giving me the chance to make a call for action. I hope lots of you today are end users in cloud native or future end users in cloud native. I totally recommend this organization. It's as we decided early on, it's nice to have a companion that it's incentivized to make you successful and doesn't have any other incentivized than this. And I'm currently leading the working group around reference architecture. So basically the journey and the references that you saw today are just one single story from many, we hope, in the future. So right now we are working to build a certain framework to present similar stories, cluster them in different industries and different geographies, and ideally imagine the value that you have from that. If you're preparing to start a journey, or you're in the middle of a journey and you don't know where to go next, or you don't know if you did it right or bad, then imagine you have a library of different stories like this, different references, which is very much relevant for your industry, on your geography. And then you can get that story. Most likely it's going to be a successful story. I'm not sure we're going to collect unsuccessful story. That would be ideal, but I don't see that happening too soon. So most likely you're going to find successful stories. And if someone else did it in your geography or industry, most likely it's going to be easier for you to pitch the numbers and the journey that you're planning to your management and your stakeholders. So the value it's real, and that's going to help all of us to improve the open source and cloud native and bring more clarity into the criticality of some projects. There's another working stream that is focusing on, again, done by TAB, so Technical Advisory Board, is focusing on delivering end users, so consumer point of view to different maintainers of projects. So that means that you're going to have even a louder voice in some critical projects that maybe you're already depending on. So there is so much value here, and we would be very helpful, very, very happy to hear from you. And ideally, you share the stories with us in a very safe manner, and then we decide what we can present, and we all learn and get in a better state in the next phase.
Absolutely. So if you do want to share, you can always join the CNCF Slack and then understand where you should go in order to contribute for the TAB channel. And there are also the solution reference that you can find on the website. So that's it for today. We do have one question, but we don't have time. So George, I think we will answer you offline on the comments. Sergio, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for sharing the story. It was extremely interesting to hear that and understand what we can implement and what you decided to go toward that. So thank you very much for sharing. Next week, we are going to talk about AI in our weekly live stream. So if you want, you can go to the events and subscribe for the next live event. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice week.
Thank you very much. Enjoy.